A little bit of a different video today, with the Switch 2 launch trailer having kind of opened the season on Nintendo's forthcoming events schedule. I thought it would be interesting to look back to see how things played out from the original Switch trailer in October 2016 to the launch of the system in March 2017. And I thought a good way to do it would be to review the Nintendo of America Twitter posts from this period. Obviously, Nintendo of America is just one branch of Nintendo, but it is the biggest English speaking market and gives us a fair overview of Nintendo's activities at this time. Some things are very different now, other things seem quite similar, but I thought it would be something interesting to review. Now, as I've gone through, I'm not going to show every Nintendo post in this era, but I am showing about 70%, including not just the ones related to Switch, but also ones to show context of how much of a push other Nintendo content was getting at the time. And alongside, we'll have a chat and maybe make the odd forecast here and there. Obviously, we started with that now infamous Mario curtain image, which I wonder if Nintendo has regretted ever since. Quite different from the shadow drop, but it's easy to forget that in those days, Nintendo's audience was much more diffused. Sure, Pokemon Go had been a massive hit and the 3DS was successful, but I'm not sure it was necessarily a sure thing that a trailer like this would cut through without them pre-announcing it, and thereby guaranteeing a massive publicity launch. With Switch 2, though, they knew it would go Black Death viral, and so a pre-launch probably wasn't something they considered essential. They also showed a big list of support from partners for the Nintendo Switch. Again, this is something that's so different now because we know that the Switch 2 will be supported by third parties based on the predecessor's successful track record. I thought it interesting that they waited a week to announce the launch presentation. Were they waiting to see if the reaction was sufficiently strong before? Is there a world where they might have dropped a different presentation in the interim and perhaps done a presentation at a different date? Again, I think the current Nintendo shows a great deal more sure-footedness. It's interesting how diverse these reveals are as well. The Game Awards, Theme Park, Pokemon, Splatoon, Jimmy Fallon, the NES Mini, Mario Run. It's easy to think that 2016 was a fallow time for Nintendo, but as we can see, far from it. Sure, the Wii U was on its way out and the 3DS was starting to show its age, but this was an incredibly fertile time for Nintendo, and really the beginning of their commitment to a far more diversified offering. While 2024 had some of this flavour with the launch of Nintendo Music and Alamo, we have become accustomed to theme park and film announcements, while the solid drumbeat of Switch games has become so familiar a part of Nintendo's output that we almost take it for granted. Although there are a few Switch items, there's not an awful lot prior to the new year, which they mark in with a gorgeous piece of Zelda-themed artwork. One thing that amuses me at the time was the team-up of Kirby and Yoshi. I really think these two make sense as partner characters because both have a cuteness appeal and both franchises particularly aim for younger players. I've mentioned this before, but I could easily see both Kirby and Yoshi returning in 2025, and actually I think a Woolly World return is a decent shout. The Nintendo Treehouse Live with Nintendo Switch is scheduled in, and this is the first time so soon into a new year that they really start to plug their system in a new way. I wonder whether the Treehouse format will be overhauled going forward, with the emphasis more on showing players' experiences in live events, especially since Treehouse events seem to be becoming relatively few and far between. 2024 had, I think, just the NES World Championships Treehouse, while 2023 had Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder only. I can imagine Nintendo wanting to let the games speak for themselves a little bit more and remove the personalities, but nevertheless, it still seems 70% likely to me that we will see Nintendo Treehouse Live events for Switch 2 before launch day. Of course, once the January reveal hits, we get an absolute ton of announcements, as every single reveal at the conference is live tweeted pretty much. Details of price are sandwiched between two more popular reveals: the release date and the decision not to go for region locking, which at the time was a huge deal and still seems like one of those miraculous departures on the Switch era. Having these announcements made individually alongside the presentation gives us a chance to see in skeleton form the rhythm of their announcement, and it is interesting. They do take care to explore the benefits of the new Joy-Con and then move to introducing two games which I think at the time were probably met rather coolly in 1-2 Switch and ARMS. As it happens, I always liked the idea of ARMS as a kind of Power Stone meets Punch-Out experience and really liked the final game. But I'm not sure the initial trailer showcasing it alongside a more gimmicky intro really did the job. Nintendo has moved well away from this style of trailer though, and while I feel like some kind of casual title at launch is likely, I think they know not to overdo the casual titles in Nintendo Directs, and the effective replacement for this presentation will be a Nintendo Direct. In fact, looking at that casual lineup over the years, the most you can say is that titles like Clubhouse Games made a Direct Mini and Endless Ocean a partner showcase. Ring Fit, Labo, and Everybody Want to Switch skipped Directs entirely. I think Switch Sports is the only major exception that springs to mind as having launched in a Direct, and that game had a real pedigree even among casual franchises. I think there has to be a 90% chance that we will see a game that demonstrates mouse mode in the April Direct as well. The remaining announcements are, of course, Splatoon 2, Super Mario Odyssey, both previewed in the original trailer, plus Xenoblade Chronicles 2. While obviously a huge title for the new system and a terrific feather in the console's cap, it is quite a niche title to be the major new announcement of the presentation in terms of a core audience game. 80 titles are claimed to be in active development for the Nintendo Switch. Seems incredible that 80 years later there will be at least 60 times that many. We also get information about a few other games of note, including Fire Emblem Warriors, details about the box, and details about Breath of the Wild's launch. Rather belatedly, we get information at the end of the tweet storm about Mario Kart 8. The next major event is a Nintendo Treehouse with Reggie himself joining in. Sadly, it seems like there are technical issues on the original stream, although hopefully Nintendo have got their ducks in a row on this one now. I dread to think how things were behind the scenes on that one, given how high stakes the Switch launch was. It is interesting that the Treehouse Live covered ARMS and Splatoon 2, two games that were not to release for 5 or 6 months, as well as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. There were also a number of announcements following at a quick pace with Konami and Capcom games, featuring in the Treehouse in the form of Super Bomberman R and Ultra Street Fighter 2 Final Challengers and Has Been Heroes. Finally, they get to Breath of the Wild. Alongside this, we get an announcement drop for Snipper Clips, still to me Nintendo's vastly underrated launch title. It's lovely to see Aonuma and Miyamoto crash the Breath of the Wild Treehouse demo, and they discuss Mario Odyssey. Again, it feels like this era of Nintendo personalities may be slowly on their way out. It's completely possible that Kosuke Ibuki could come to talk Mario Kart, but equally I do wonder whether they would prefer to let the game stand alone and not have anything new alongside. There's a cool shot of Miyamoto posing to promote Miyamoto's discussion of the forthcoming Mario Odyssey, and they round out the Treehouse clips with a pose from Reggie with the new Switch and an infographic showing a rather meagre lineup of exclusives compared to what we're used to these days, although I have to say there were lots of awesome games for the launch period nonetheless. Advertising then turns to promoting the first Nintendo Switch Experience preview tour, with a fun image of someone making a Nintendo Switch image out of the snowfall on their car. The Fire Emblem Direct manages something quite impressive in hitting 3DS, mobile, and Switch content plus Amiibo and others. Fire Emblem is a franchise that has had a touch-and-go history with even coming to the West, and as a big fan of tactics games, I am delighted to see it. This does make me wonder, though, whether it was serendipity that so much Fire Emblem stuff came together in a time frame that was propitious for being promoted like this, or whether they really decided ahead of time to give the titles a major coordinated push. In different forms, we've seen big pushes to revive Pikmin. They definitely put a huge amount behind Metroid with Metroid Prime 4 and likely further 2D Metroid titles after the success of the wonderful Metroid Dread. This makes me wonder whether there's a likelihood that they are going to try the same thing around the Switch 2 launch. It's probably a little bit trickier now, given that they don't have a second string console, and so while they can make a big deal about a single Switch game and possibly link it to other content, the same sense of breadth of content is rather more difficult to achieve. Pointless re-releasing a Switch and Switch 2 game too close to each other, as the sales of the Switch 1 game could cannibalize the Switch 2 title sales. Beyond this, there's quite a diversity of stuff being pushed. eShop credits with the eShop, a relatively new phenomenon at that time, as well as a host of games, a Pikachu Yellow edition for the new 3DS XL, plus a whole lot of new content. The new trailer for the Switch was launched on the 1st of February and seemed to have been destined for the 2017 Super Bowl. I think, given the date of the next reveal in April, I think the likelihood of a Super Bowl trailer has dropped to at most 30%. It's not impossible that they could have some kind of general mood trailer for the Switch and Switch 2 featuring new Mario Kart or something, but I really think they'll want to keep their powder dry until then. There are plugs in here for My Nintendo, Splatoon, a focus on LAN gameplay, which I guess they felt they needed, further explication after their original launch event, and then a global test fire announcement. The Breath of the Wild devs featured at the Game Developer Conference, and this gets a plug from the Nintendo account, and we even get bespoke Nintendo art for Valentine's Day with Wolf Link and Breath of the Wild Link in a surprise crossover. They take Valentine's Day as a time to plug the Breath of the Wild expansion pass as well. It seems 50% likely to me that at least one first-party game this year will have an expansion pass for sale on day one. It's not something we've seen for a long time now, perhaps not since Fire Emblem Engage at the start of 2023, but on the Switch they will want to try to build in those long-term player relationships, and so it makes sense for one here, even though at the current point in time I can't think of a title that would particularly benefit from it that would be likely to show up. Mario Kart, I guess, is the most probable, therefore. There's still a lot of Yoshi and Poochie fun alongside the Nintendo Switch demo events. Sometime I should do a video about the dogs of Nintendo, because between Poochie, Isabelle, Polterpup, Bark and Bite, let alone the cast of Nintendogs, and probably more I'm not thinking of, they really do like their dogs. Maybe that's the secret to Metroid Prime 4 breaking 10 million. There's also a lovely nostalgic cameo from everybody's favourite Nintendo Minute creators turned indie podcasters, Kit and Krista. Hooray! 23rd of February saw the announcement of the Nindies Showcase on the 28th of February, which seems like bags of time for a presentation announcement compared to many recent ones, although with a notification of a precise date in April 2025 for the next Direct being on the calendar already, I guess we can't complain too much. Then we get into the final countdown, with a reinforcement of the core games and concepts that have made the Switch so exciting to players. They take care to explain how to actually set up your Nintendo Switch, something that hopefully will be straightforward on the Switch 2, although I think it will be something they'll want to focus on quite a bit, as Switch 2 is far more integrated with the previous system. Things like needing to move my Animal Crossing island again will be a pain, and I really hope that this time they manage to avoid resetting the playtimes. I really liked ordering my Switch titles by playtime, but obviously that became impossible after the jump to Switch OLED. The top ones by a distance for me would be Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing and Tears of the Kingdom, with Super Mario Maker 2, Splatoon 2, Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 a little further behind. We get some nice photos from the Game Developer Conference. Clearly Nintendo still attend GDC, but I wonder if they'd now be quite as keen to promote such appearances. Still, the chance to deep dive and talk about the breaking the conventions concept behind Breath of the Wild only added to the hype at the time, and they specifically quoted, "By creating a game in which the player can interact with objects and the objects can react to the world, Zelda could become a more active game." I suspect they're far from done with seeing how far this philosophy takes them. There is a certain magic to looking back at Breath of the Wild being so inventive and groundbreaking, and I wonder whether Nintendo can find a game that shows the same innovative spirit again this time. I have high hopes for the next Mario in this regard, but obviously that's a very high bar, as the last game that I can think of which is really on par with Breath of the Wild in terms of absolutely huge impact is probably Super Mario 64. Finally, we get to the reveal window, and we're still mixing in lots of Fire Emblem stuff alongside Nintendo's pre-announcement hype, but finally we get to launch, although they then have to do another announcement for Switch owners in Mountain Time. Must really suck if you run a game shop close to the time zone border that you'll be 1 hour behind your neighbours releasing the console. Is there a case for them to sync not just dates but times internationally? I think there's probably not even a 10% chance that they would or even could pull off such a thing, as 4 a.m. on the west coast of North America will be something like 11 p.m. in New Zealand. I'm not sure if there's a precedent for this kind of staggered embargo of a physical product, and it would give a very different energy to a midnight campout, but it could be kind of a fun idea that might fit their surprise and delight outside the box thinking. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane. I will have some other more analytical videos investigating some of the deeper meanings behind this possibly, but for now, thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting and checking out the Patreon, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.